Alright, ladies and gentlemen, diving right in, we woke up and chose violence, so I'm sure you've seen the last video. If you haven't, you should go check it out. I covered the sorcerer, how broken it is at start. I went through all the skills, kind of explained, what different paths you could take, and we're going to do that again right now, and we're going to do the barbarian. So the reason why I did the sorcerer first, and now I'm going to do the barbarian, is simply because those two classes I'm not comfortable with. They're not my first choice that I would go to at all whatsoever. It's just not my cup of tea, but I'm going to cover it for you guys because gotta show a little love to everybody who's playing this fucking game right now. I've waited for years for this game. I know you guys probably have too. If you've never played before and you're coming here to try and figure out if you want to get the game and you're watching the class videos that I'm doing explaining how broken they are at start, the potential of being broken, and by broken, if you don't know, that means high damage output with a low damage input. So output meaning the damage you do and input meaning the damage that you take. So I will be covering all 5 classes. The sorcerer was first. The barbarian is today, right now. Well, I say today, but all of these videos are going to get uploaded today. I'm going to go over all 5 classes. But right now, in this video, it is the barbarian. I don't know the next one I'm going to do just yet, but I am heavily leaning towards that druid because my main is a necro. So I'm going to do the necro video last, just because the necro, it holds a special place in my heart. It always has. It probably always will. And right behind that special place in my heart for the necro is the rogue, because I like the ranged gameplay. I'm not one for up in your face kind of gameplay. But without further ado, let's figure out what is so special about the barbarian. So, barbarian. Powerful warriors who rely on brute force to subdue their enemies. Barbarians are able to swap between an array of powerful weapons during combat, ensuring that they are prepared for any situation. Berserking. Channel your inner rage to enter and maintain the berserking state, increasing damage and movement speed. Bleed. You use slashing weapons to cause enemies to bleed, dealing damage over time, so a DOT. Walking Arsenal. Become a walking arsenal, gaining damage and other bonuses for using various weapons in combat. Unbridled Rage. The pinnacle of aggression. You have an increased fury cost to use skills. In exchange, your skills are dramatically more powerful. So, the barbarian is, at best, on paper right now, the epitome of hand-to-hand, in-your-face, gimme, gimme, gimme. So let's see what the barbarian can do for us today. Right, we're gonna go for a solid Viking look. Bingo. Eye color, we're gonna go for the light blue. Looks better in my opinion. Right, hairstyle. See, I don't see anything wrong with that hairstyle for a Viking hairstyle, but we are going to go and look for, here we go. Yeah, so the warrior knot. Alright, facial hair. There we go. This just marks out on the eyebrows. I'm gonna go with that. Yeah, red fire. Alright, so makeup. basically like war paint, you know? We're gonna go with that. Right, jewelry. Start back at base. Get a little closer to that head. Here we go. Bingo. Alright, so let's look at markings. Change that to... yeah, normal tattoo color. See, that looks the closest thing, and the only reason I say that is because right there on the forearm it looks more like ruins, and they were known for runic tattoos. So let's go with Vilharn. And we're going to tag it just so that I know not to play it off of cam for you guys. Boom, and as always, we're going in on World Tier 2, Veteran. So, let's figure out where we are in terms of brokenness off the bat. Again, if you guys don't know, mouse and keyboard, it is escape. On Xbox controller, it is B, and on a PlayStation controller, it is circle. So, just like I did the last video, we're going to go over these really quick and figure out which one you should definitely start out with to try and give yourself that edge when it comes to getting in and just demolishing. So right off the bat we have Flay, which is 9 Fury generation, 4 Fury, 10 Fury, and 9 Fury. Okay, so you have Flay, dealing 1 damage, but inflicting a 13 bleeding damage over 5 seconds. Then you have Frenzy, unleash a rapid flurry of blows, dealing 6 damage with each pair of hits. If Frenzy hits an enemy, its attack speed is increased by 20% for 3 seconds, up to 60%. Requires dual-wielded weapons. Bash. Bash the enemy with your weapon, dealing 12 damage. After bashing enemies 4 times, your next bash will stun for 1.25 seconds. This increases to 2 seconds if using a two-handed weapon. And then Lunging Strike. Lunge forward and strike an enemy for 12 damage. So right off the bat, it seems like Lunging Strike definitely has the upper hand. But why don't we come back and look at Bash? Right? Because Lunging Strike is 12 damage, right? And Bash is 12 damage, but Bash also has a stun. Granted, a whole lot better of a stun if you're using a two-handed weapon, okay? But it has a stun. And then in addition to that stun, right, it generates 10 Fury, whereas Lunging Strike will only generate 9. If we look at Frenzy, it also could be a very valid starter, only because potentially in groups you could become unstoppable. But in terms of starting the game and getting off on the right foot, I'm stuck between Flay and Bash. Now don't get it twisted, guys. There is a really awesome feature that they give you when you're learning what you want, right? So this is my attack speed for that. Okay? So when I look, I have a two-handed bludgeoning, right? And then I have a main hand offhand, and then I have a two-handed slashing. So when we look at our abilities, it's right here, bash. It specifically states right up here underneath the name. Like it's literally like right there, just a little bit more over. You see bludgeoning. So that's how you know it's going to use this. So it's a slow attack speed, but it's not super slow, right? But here's where it gets great. So until you hit level 8, you can refund for free. Especially if you're like me and you want to know what both have to offer, right? So we can refund that. We can pick up Flay, okay? Auto swaps the weapon for you. Seems to be just about the same amount of speed, right? So let's learn Frenzy and see what Frenzy does for us. And I believe it said with each pair of hits, it's 6 damage. But if it hits an enemy, its attack speed is increased by 20% for 3 seconds, up to 60%. So the crazy part about that, right, is literally the simple fact that it has a decent attack speed as it is, but increasing it could be potentially breaking, just for the simple fact of, you know, what it can do. And then of course you have Lunging Strike, which requires any complete arsenal weapon. Well, your arsenal weapons are these. These are your arsenal weapons. You can have two two-handed weapons equipped, plus normal one-handed weapons. And granted, both these hand axes are slashing. I could run a hammer and an axe and be fine. Or I could run a sword and a shield, or an axe and a shield, or a hammer and a shield. That's the beautiful part about the Barbarian. You are versatile as hell. Nobody can tell you what to do. I could tell you how to build one way, and somebody else, 15 minutes later down the road could tell you to build it some other way. And it's still, at the end of the day, it's going to be what you want to do, because the versatility of the Barbarian is unmatched. I mean, it literally is an unhinged warrior. 4 weapons. And he just looks like he's going to eat my firstborn. I mean, seriously. How do you kill that? How? But beautiful part about it is, if I don't want Frenzy, I just refund it. So let's see what happens when we do Lunging Strike. So it doesn't actually lunge you anywhere. It just, does that. Now I will say I really do like the bash, only because with a two-handed weapon like we do have, that's a 2-second stun. What does it take for the 2-second stun? 4 times. So if they're even alive after 4 times of hitting them, you got it in the bag. So let's go down here and test this real quick. Yeah. So so literally I did this a little different than I did the sorcerer, only because there is an array of ways that you can build a barbarian, and I really just wanted to look at that. So starting off with bash, I would have to say, is the best way to start out. 1, because of the 10 fury that it generates. 2, because right off the bat, I haven't done anything special to the character. You guys have been with me the whole way. This is the base. You know, this is what you get when you start the game as a barbarian. You get that two-handed weapon, that two-handed hammer, and you can run bash. So if something's alive after 4 hits, it gets a stun. Now, there is a boss early game, but I'm pretty sure you unlock one of these and one of these before you get to him. But in the case that you don't, you still have your stun to fall back into, because it should stun him. Now, he may be immune, I don't know. I didn't have that problem when I fought him with the Necromancer, but hey. It is what it is. So, without further ado, let's break these fucking skills down. Whirlwind. Rapidly attacks surrounding enemies for 7 damage. Okay, Fury is 25 per second, and it's channeled. Okay, Hammer of the Ancients. Bludgeoning. See, that says channeled, and this says bludgeoning. So it kind of makes you wonder what you... Oh, requires any complete arsenal weapon. Okay, so I assume that it'll probably take its own idea for that then. So, Hammer of the Ancients. Two-handed bludgeoning weapon. We have that. Slam your hammer down with the Fury of the Ancients, dealing 20 damage to a concentrated area. Upheaval. Tear into the ground with your weapon and fling debris forward, dealing 28 damage. Requires a two-handed weapon. Doesn't specify what. Double Swing. Your dual wield. Sweep your weapons from opposite directions, dealing 11 damage with each weapon. Enemies caught in the center are damaged by both. So, what that's saying is, that's 11 damage with each weapon. What they do neglect to tell you, right, is that these already do 17 damage. So then you have to take the 17 and add the 11. Much like this. You know, when I'm using my basic. Right? So 17 plus 11, 18, 28, 28 damage basically. For one swing. This is about what you'll get. And then you have Rend. That is a classic. Rend. Cleave enemies in front of you, dealing 4 damage and inflicting 34 bleeding damage over 5 seconds. That right there can make or break your build. Not saying you should use it, but it is a classic. I would use it. So, dealing direct damage with Rend extends the duration of vulnerable enemies by 2 seconds. Deals 12% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and vulnerable enemies already take 20% increased damage, so you're talking about breaking this even more. And look, that grants 4 fury per enemy hit, to a maximum of 20 fury. Alright, so let's look at Whirlwind. 1 fury each time it deals direct damage, 4 against elites, increased damage until it's cancelled. Ooh, now that would be a good one to use. Doing the Whirlwind, go with Enhanced and then Furious. That is a nice one. Alright, so now we have Hammer of the Ancients. 3% more Fury for 5 seconds for each enemy damaged by Hammer of the Ancients, stacking up to 10 times. So that's a lot of Fury. 1% additional damage for each point of Fury you had when using it. After overpowering with the Hammer of the Ancients, you deal 30% more damage. See, I would go with Furious. Yeah, Enhanced and then Furious. Yep, then we got Upheaval. 20% chance to stun all enemies it damages for 2.5 seconds. Plus... excuse me. If Upheaval damages at least 2 enemies, you gain Berserking for 2 seconds. which increased to 3 seconds if it damages at least 4 enemies. Now this is the key here, berserking. Right, let me do this with the mouse because it allows me to slide it to where you guys can read it. If upheaval damages at least 2 enemies, you gain berserking for 2 seconds. Increase to 3 seconds if it damages at least 4 enemies. So here's where it gets fun, right? Berserking grants 25% increased damage and 15% increased movement speed. This effect lasts up to 5 seconds. So the beauty of it is upheaval damaging 2 enemies, you gain berserking for 2 seconds. You can then upheaval again, and if you hit 2 more enemies or 3 enemies, boom. Because it goes to 3 seconds if you damage 4. So if you hit 2 at the first one and 4 enemies for the second hit, you got your 5 seconds of berserking, and that is just broken. The next time you use it, you basically can go back to back with it. It'll keep you going. It'll keep you on your feet. Alright, so now we have double swing. What is that? Endless Fury. See, that'd be nice too. But as for like damaging skills, right? So we got double swing. Enhanced double swing damages a stunned or knocked down enemy, gain 25 fury, which is nice, but you know. Double swing while berserking grants 2 additional seconds of berserking. Oh. But that requires you to actually go into berserking. Violent double swing. So that means that you potentially, you could use upheaval, right? And have upheaval on violent upheaval. And then swap to double swing once you're in your berserking state. And you go with furious double swing to just stay in your berserking state. Just sit there. Boom. 2 additional seconds. Every single time. Every single time. Just repeatedly berserking. Makes them vulnerable for 1 second. See, and I don't like that because that doesn't seem viable. 1 second? You get 1 extra hit in maybe? Maybe. At bare minimum, maybe. Or like at most maximum. Maybe you get 2. But definitely you get 1 hit on it, and it just doesn't seem viable. 1 second doesn't seem long enough. Ground stomp. Yep. Rallying cry. Just ground stomp. I say that because you deal 3 damage and you stun the surrounding enemies for 3 seconds, but that damage output just, I don't know. It does say defensive, so I guess in the fact of you using it for defense to just stun everything around you and be able to focus on one enemy or maybe a small group that are clustered, I guess it could work and be super useful, but not for me. I don't like the low damage. I want to get in there. I want to kill something quick and I want to move on. And you got rallying cry. Increasing movement speed and resource generation for both you and your allies. You got Iron Skin, absorbs 50% of your missing life for 5 seconds. Okay. And Challenging Shout, taunt nearby enemies and gain 40% damage reduction. That is what I would use. And the reason why is because when you bring the enemies to you, and you're using upheaval, you drag everyone to you, and then you hit them with upheaval. Boom. Instant berserking state for 4 seconds, and then you go to town with double swing if they're not dead. And if you run out of fury, you have bash to generate 10 fury. It's not that hard. I mean, 3 hits, and then you have enough fury. I don't know, just saying. It's a good idea. Alright, so now we move down here. Kick. So 7 damage with a knockback. Enemies knocked into terrain take additional 22 and stunned. That could come in handy. War cry. Bellow a mighty war cry, increasing your damage dealt by 15% for 6 seconds and nearby allies for 3 seconds. So basically, a damage buff for you and your allies. That makes the Barbarian an indispensable tool for having in a party. Literally an indispensable tool. You have charge, unstoppable, pushing enemies with you, then swing through them for 10 damage and knocking them back. Yeah, that's cool and all. Not for me, but, you know, maybe somebody else. Leap forward and slam down, dealing 13 damage and knocking back surrounding enemies on impact, of course. Get down here to rupture. Skewer enemies in front of you, dealing 4 damage and rip your weapon out, damaging enemies for their total bleeding amount and removing all bleeding damage. So that means that you need to be having them, you want to make them bleed. Now if I'm correct, I think all of the skills, anything slashing, there we go. Anything slashing, yeah, requires a slashing weapon, that's what I thought. As I say, anything slashing is supposed to automatically apply bleeding. So, in terms of like a boss early game, who knows? Maybe if we come back up here to the main, that flay, in addition to that bleeding damage that it does there, because it requires a slashing weapon, we could double duty that. And it could be so much better. Moving back down here. Death Blow. Attempting a killing strike, dealing 49 damage to enemies in front of you. If this kills an enemy, its cooldown is reset. Cooldown is 15 seconds. You got Steel Grasp. Throw out a trio of chains that deal 9 damage and pull in enemies. So, Steel Grasp matched with... where is it? Right there. Upheaval. That's another tactic there too. Because you could taunt. Right? And then War Cry. Or War Cry, Taunt, Steel Grasp, and then swing all the way up here to Upheaval, and then hit him with a double swing. Boom, done. If that doesn't kill a group of enemies, I think you're doing something wrong with your weapons. Because you could chain that together so quick. Call of the Ancients. Ultimate. 3 Ancients to aid you in battle for 6 seconds. Iron Maelstrom. Ooh. Activate 3 times to attach chains to each of your weapons and perform an attack. First, your two-handed bludgeoning slams into the ground, dealing 24 and stunning enemies for 2. Next, your two-handed slashing weapon swipes in front of you, dealing 8 damage and inflicting 49 bleeding damage over 5 seconds. And finally, your dual-wield weapons swing around you, dealing 13 per hit. Oh, Wrath of the Berserker. Explode into rage, knocking back surrounding enemies and gaining berserking and unstoppable for 5 seconds. For the next 10 seconds, dealing direct damage with basic skills grants berserking for 5 seconds. Unstoppable. Characters have all control impairing effects removed and prevented. So that means no stun, no like fear, you know, like how they did in Diablo 3 where your character would auto run away, you just lost control. Yeah, won't happen with Unstoppable. Then of course, you know, you have your berserking, 25% increased damage and 15% increased movement speed. That ultimate though is damn, because it grants you berserking for a basic skill within the 10 seconds of using it, but still. Then of course you have these, which really depends on your build of how you're going to use it. So there's that. And we won't be able to get to the town with the Barbarian because it is such a complex class. It really is. This is an advanced level class. For anyone watching, That doesn't mean that you can't play it. It just means that you may have a harder time learning it and trying to, cope with all the skills and the different things that it offers. But honestly, the Barbarian seems pretty broken as well, especially like the later down the road you get, like the farther you go with the Barbarian, the more broken he is. So, I love your faces. Y'all stay beautiful, stay awesome, and we will catch you next time. Goodbye!